I want to say that I think Grosjean had an incredible race, though. Super disciplined, kept it really clean. He's sort of, well, the first two races of the year, he sort of chucked it going for the win, and maybe the difference here was that his teammate was out in front, so that he was just going to be more of a role player. But I think it showed a level of discipline for Grosjean that we hadn't seen really, at least not this year.
Yeah, he was pretty close to Kirkwood at the end, and I actually had the same thought. I was thinking, although he had a sniff of the lead, it would have been his teammate that he would have had to lunge against for it, and I think that probably helped with the restraint a little bit. But to your point, Grosjean's been a contender in all three races. He's been a contender for the win each time out so far this season, but the difference is he brought it home in one piece in a race that probably required a lot of patience and fuel save and all that, so it's a good race for him. It's a really good race.
All right, well, why don't we just go on down the order then?
Yeah.
I mean, Kirkwood had an absolutely incredible race, incredible weekend. He's the winningest he's the winningest driver, I think, by a mile on the road to Indy.
Yeah.
Number of wins and percentage of wins and all this stuff. So it's not a surprise that he was going to be an IndyCar race winner, but man, it didn't take very long for, once he joined Andretti.
Yeah, and I mean, didn't have the best season last year. I do wonder if some of that was just that he knew, mentally he wasn't fully locked in just because he knew he had the contract with Andretti coming up the following year. But you're right, very quickly, 3 races into his second season, first with Andretti, he is an IndyCar race winner. So he's done a lot of winning. He's got a taste for it now, so we might see a lot more of that to come.
Yeah, big congratulations to him. And then we already talked about Grosjean's discipline race. Ericsson, without that little incident that backed him up, would definitely contend for the win. I mean, he was right there anyway.
Right. It really was. The fairest fight was between him and Kirkwood at the end because they had stopped on the same lap. But the difference was because he had been stacked up on the restart all the way back on lap 25, he was about 6.5 seconds back from Kirkwood. So he had to save the same amount of fuel, but also make up 6.5 seconds if he was going to come up to win the race. And just ultimately wasn't, it's not on the cards.
And he also had to pass a few guys along the way, too.
That's true.
So, tall order, but man, he gave it a good shot. So, Colton Hurd ends up in 4th.
Yeah, there was a moment, like I said earlier in the episode, where I thought maybe he was going to run up and challenge the leaders. But Grosjean and Kirkwood, his teammates, I think they just had him this weekend, but 4th is still a really strong finish.
Yeah, and that's 1, 2, and 4 for Andretti Racing, and after a tough start to the season, that was, probably a big relief and something to celebrate for sure. Michael Andretti sure looked pretty happy after the race. Palou comes home in 5th. I mean, solid race. Had he not gotten stuck in that little ordeal behind O'Ward, he might have been right up there for the win.
Yeah, he actually drove really well. Despite finishing one spot back from where he started, I think he was mostly just hurt by that stack up on the restart because he was able to go a lap longer than everybody else on the second stop or the second stint. So he did a great job with fuel save, and he also did the fastest lap of the race on lap 70. So he was out there, banging around. So I would say 5th is still a good result, all things considered, but he had a lot of pace this weekend.
So Will Power ends up in 6th. Pretty solid. I guess you would think that if Power's not winning or closer to the front, he might be a little frustrated. But really, I mean, a 6th place, he seemed pretty happy with it. I was watching the interview afterwards, and drove a smart race, and after starting all the way back in 13th. Managed to pull off a 6th place. So.
Yeah, no, it was a great race for him. I think he just came forward all race. He got up to 11th in the pits under the yellow. I think he jumped to 9th on the restart with the big stack up, and then on to 8th the next lap later. But then he got, McLaughlin on track, and then got Newgarden, who was in heavy fuel save, and then ultimately wound up in 6th when Rossi stuffed it at the end.
Yeah, and he was the highest finishing guy out of all the people who started the race on the primaries. And that hurt him. They had to come in and pit on lap 22, and they would have stretched out those primaries. So
Yeah.
all things considered, I think he did really well. And same 7th place for Rosenquist.
Yep, definitely. I actually don't have a lot written down about Rosenquist, but strong race for him.
Also started on the primaries though too, so was stung a little bit by that, but managed a 7th place. And how about Marcus Armstrong?
Yeah, this guy's good. He brings it home 8th after starting 12th, I believe. Made up a couple spots with that stack up. I think he kind of shot right up the inside of Award and Pillow when they were backed into the tires. But he held his own. He did. I mean, this is only his 2nd IndyCar race, and he was thrown right into a mega fuel save. 75% of this race was spent fuel saving, and managed it like a pro.
Yeah, I would say that's probably something that you almost never do in European style racing.
Well, yeah, especially the junior categories.
Right. You start with all the fuel you're going to need, and you just let it rip. You might have to baby your tires, but not your fuel. So, yeah, that was impressive, and he probably learned a lot along the way. And later in the season, maybe even next week, or 2 weeks from now when they're at Barber, he might be right up there in the front.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. So Newgarden, looked like he was going to dominate there for a while. I had realized that, since he was on the greens on that middle stint, that he was disadvantaged. But, man, he made it work, though. I was surprised he was able to hold on to the lead all the way up until his stop.
Especially with his teammate McLaughlin dropping like a rock on those tires behind him.
Yeah, so I thought that, man, he'd survived that whole stint. He's going to come out, he's going to come out looking really good. But, just that extra, that one lap
2
before,
miles.
yeah, and then 2 laps before the eventual winner
Right.
made all the difference in the world. Really.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I just watched his interview, and he was frustrated. He didn't say anything. He said we had to overcome a problem, and you could tell he was biting his tongue. And I think it was just that he felt like he got called in a little bit early.
Yeah.
But hey, man, I mean, what are you you're gonna debate Tim Cindric on a strategy call? I mean, that's not. But I think that was kind of what went on there.
Yeah, it's hard not to blame him for being frustrated too, because it did look like he was in position to win for a large portion of this race. Scotty McLaughlin finishes in 10th right behind him. Cameras picked him up a good amount. I think he was in some scraps, but yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well, when he was, running in 4th there in the middle of that 2nd stint, you were thinking, or I was thinking, that he was going to have a way better finish than 10th. But again, those guys who started on the black, well, he was his alternates really went off, so he faded from 4th to like 11th.
Yeah,
before that round of pit stops.
Yeah, so he was hurt by that yellow being on the blacks, and then he was definitely the most visible victim of the green tires, being stuck on the green tires for that 30-something lap middle stint.
Okay, then we got Santino Ferrucci.
Yeah.
Solid 11th place in the AJ Foyt number 14.
Great race. He started all the way back in 18th. I think he restarted on lap 25 in 15th. But he actually passed O'Ward right before the last round of stops, and then I think he overcut Harvey up to 12th, and then finally winds up 11th when Rossi goes into the barriers at the end. So he drove really well. We didn't really get to see a little bit of him on TV, but I think we've talked to him on this podcast before. We've interviewed him, and I think his smooth style and his his patience behind the wheel really paid off for him in this race.
I noticed that he was moving up the order finally in that final stint, and I was looking at the times, and it looked like Rahal was just breathing down his neck. And right behind Rahal was Lundgaard, and I was thinking, man, I would love to see that. Is he fending off, or what's going on back there? But he was able to hold the position. I think he ended up putting a little bit of a gap on Rahal by the end. But it sure looked like, just looking at the timing, that he had his hands full and was probably in defense mode. And did a great job of keeping the position and bringing it home in 11th.
Yeah, that's a good call. Speaking of Rahal, he comes home in 12th, right behind him, obviously, which is 12 spots up from where he started. I would go ahead and say that Rahal probably had the best race other than Kyle Kirkwood. He started all the way back in 24th, and he beat both of his teammates. He passed 6 cars to get to 18th before the yellow for Dixon, so he was moving right from the start of this race. Still restarted all the way back in 18th, and he just kept coming forward. He was passing people like crazy, and then winds up in 12th ultimately. Like you said, breathing down Ferrucci's neck and kind of getting handed a spot when Rossi goes off, like most of these guys did. But it was a very good race for him.
So, and then right behind him, Harvey, who we didn't see a lot of, but again, it's good to see him up the order and kind of showing some of his old form. You know, even though it was only 13th, it's still, you know, and then Lundgaard right behind him. So you had all 3 Rahal cars, 12, 13, and 14. Again, doesn't blow your mind, right? But still a little bit of improvement.
Yeah, that's the thing. Improvement for sure. Yeah, so it's good to see all those guys a little further up in the order. Simon Pagenaud finishes 15th. I'm a little surprised by that. I actually put him in my fantasy lineup because I think he likes street courses and he was fast in morning warm-up, and I thought I'd give it a try, but really didn't see a whole lot of him, so I don't really know the story of his race that well. It looks like he came in on lap 53 when Kirkwood and those other guys came in on lap 54, so he probably had a little bit more fuel saved than the others at the end. But yeah, it's a tough day for him.
So then DeFrancesco, it looks like 16th, which, you know, the last guy on the lead lap. I didn't see much of him, brought it home in one piece, but with his teammates up in 1st, 2nd, and 4th, he's probably a little disappointed in himself for that one.
Yeah.
You would think, you know, that he would expect to be a little further up the order. But then, where are we here?
So then we're at 17th, which is Ward, who's lapped. And looked at one point like he was maybe going to contend for the win, you know, early in the race. I think he led both the practice sessions. He looked really good early in the weekend. Didn't qualify right at the front, but I think he was still in the Fast 6. But obviously he's a big piece of the big stack up, and he rolls away from that in 13th place. And he's all the way down to 16th by the final stops, and he comes in on the same lap as Newgarden, I believe. So he had a lot of fuel save at the end of this race and just never really gets going again. So he winds up lapped in 17th place, which is a bit of a shocker.
Yeah, I think he was really trying to take advantage of his tires in 2 different situations and really got over aggressive. The first one on Dixon, you know, when the greens started to go away for Dixon and that his primaries were an advantage. He took the big dive bomb, got away with it, and then but brought out the yellow that actually hurt that strategy.
Yeah.
Then when he restarted on the greens, you know, he knew it was time to make hay and just went for it and just got in a little bit too aggressive. I think he had to stop with Newgarden also. Again, those guys were both on the green tires, and maybe they were just starting to go off, or they were worried that they were on the edge. And then, like you said, those 2 extra laps of fuel save pretty much did him in at the end.
Yeah.
But then we got Stingray Robb,
Yep.
18th. You know, he didn't see much of him. I thought he was a little bit further up. I noticed that he did get penalized for a pit speed violation. I don't think it really cost him a lot of spots. I mean, he was near the back, but I think it cost him at least 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But anyway, he brings it home. Ilott had a pretty eventful race in 19th.
Yeah. He did. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, something we never mentioned was the practice crash. Ilott and VK were both victims of the track people changing the track on him and not telling him. That was shocking.
Pretty bizarre.
I mean, IndyCar must not have really known about it or something, because how do you have any kind of a structural change to the track and not tell the teams? So the very first flyer, you know, I mean, they're expecting to be able to do what they did in the session before. He gets launched, And so he's behind the 8 ball, misses the entire second practice session.
Yeah.
And I forget what happened in qualifying. He ends up starting 22nd, which is not like, you would expect him to be a little higher up. Maybe it was just, lack of track time. And then when he comes out, after getting the wave around right in front of his teammate, trying to hold on to the lead, that was almost a disaster.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And not to mention he had smacked the wall and blown out his right front early, 7 laps into the race also. So he had a tough weekend. But
he brings it home in one piece.
Yep. And he is 3 spots ahead of where he started, which is always a good thing, I guess. Malukas also had a pretty tough race. He got damaged in the... I don't know if it was the restart stack up, but he got some damage shortly after the restart and had to replace his front wing under green, so make an extra stop, which pinned him a lap down for a while. And truthfully, don't really know what happened to him after that, but he was back there.
Yeah, he's not used to starting back there in 25th. So, qualifying incident. And I think he might have had a practice incident too.
I think, he actually, I don't know, but he did have that qualifying incident.
So Castroneves ends up 21st. He had that I don't know if it was the first or the second lap. I think it was the first lap. Yeah. That's right. Where it looked like he kind of spun it on his own.
Yeah, it's not really something you expect to see from a guy with as much experience as Castroneves. Hinch said maybe he took a lot of curb, which would obviously upset the rear of the car on corner exit. But that didn't look like it was the case, and actually he was far enough around the corner that I don't think the bumps had anything to do with it. I think maybe he just stood on the gas a little too hard and got caught out by it. It's a little surprising, so that put him on the back foot for the entire rest of the race.
He started on the harder primary tire and maybe just didn't have enough heat in him and just sort of misjudged it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rossi, man, all the way back in 22nd after a pretty solid race.
Very solid race. He was in 6th. He was looking really good. And he drops all the way back to 22nd and hands everybody between 6th and 22nd a free spot right at the end of this race.
No idea what happened there. Just saw the camera showing him stuck in the tire wall, and I haven't heard anything else about it.
Yeah, same.
So Connor Daly back in 23rd. Nothing to say there. I'm not sure what happened, if he had something that cost him a lap or two, but
just didn't really seem like he had the pace, honestly.
Yeah.
Ben Peterson, 24th. We did see him spin into the turn 1 runoff at one point. IndyCar was able to keep it green, get him going again without having to put out full course yellow, which was nice. But, he's a rookie, so I think for him, just finishing the race, doing all the laps, seat time is everything in racing. And so I think just to bring it home, you just got to check this one off the list and move on to the next one.
Yeah, and then Augustine Canapino, pretty interesting there with the strategy to keep him out. Like I said before, I was a little surprised some of the other guys on primaries just didn't try that. Get up to the front, finish out the stint on the black tires, shorten their green the rest of the race. And so I thought it was a pretty good idea. It didn't work out at all. It was kind of a disaster. But But I liked it.
Yeah, and he is credited with leading 3 laps, which is kind of cool. So there's that. Then you get VK in 26, who DNF'd on lap 48 with what's just listed as a mechanical. Quietly dropped out of this one.
Yeah, he also had that issue in practice with the curbing where he got launched, not knowing that they'd added some curbs. And that had to set him back. I mean, he didn't miss the entire second practice session, but missed most of it, and ended up starting 19th. I think he got as high. Well, let me see. It looks like he got as high as about 14th, and that's it before his mechanical.
Yeah, I think all in all, he's an IndyCar race winner, and he's been really fast. I think he's probably just frustrated in general that he's not been getting the results, and the team doesn't seem to have the speed that it once did when he was driving for him. So, hope to see him back on top soon.
Yeah, Scott Dixon last.
Yeah, and visibly, it's rare that we see Dixon that frustrated in an interview ever. it's understandable, but it's a tough weekend for him.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, we talked about the incident a little bit. There were no penalties assessed, but it was clearly rough driving.
Yeah.
And you could see the frustration. I did watch an interview with O'Ward afterwards, and he wasn't really apologetic. You know, he saw the replay and saw that he'd gotten even.
Yeah.
And just, you know, felt like he wasn't in the wrong, but sure looked aggressive to me and ended up, you know, costing Dixon pretty heavily.
Yeah,
So,
and to be fair to O'Ward in that point, I think O'Ward was really late on the brakes. It's a naughty move, you could say, but I think, you know, O'Ward was also, I'm sure, very frustrated because he had just finished the race in 17th, heavy fuel save. So I don't think he was about to jump out of the car and be apologetic to anyone. I think he was probably ready to just storm off to the motorhome.
that's a good point. Good point.
So yeah.
All right, well, that wraps it up.
That wraps it up.
Okay, so really looking forward to the Alabama race. I wish I could go. Maybe I will. I don't know. That's an awesome track and should be a great race. And I'm going to leave a little outro here.
Yeah, wait, real quick, I just want to say if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to give us a like and to subscribe. We just started putting these clips on YouTube, so you know, any of that helps us out. Maybe let us know in the comments who you thought had the best race. And then otherwise, we're up on Instagram now, and I've been on Twitter for a little bit, and I've got some Instagram reels going up where I'm trying to actually splice in some shots of the lap charts and the data that we're looking at while we do that. So if you're on either of those platforms, feel free to go ahead and give us a follow.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from anybody. It'd be nice. I know there's people listening. We just haven't heard much from you, so let's hear it.